Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview. Where every single week I interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate professionals, and straight up top badasses. They're out there dominating their space. They're people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, you guys, we got another special rock star guest here on the podcast. This is actually his third time being here on the show. It's a good friend of mine, amazing entrepreneur, but also has been a great coach and mentor for me personally over the last 10 years and has had such a profound impact on every aspect of my business and my life. So our guest today, Alex Charfen. You guys, Alex goes so deep into so many different things today. We talk a lot about motivation, about mindset, about business planning, strategies, the future economy, how to prepare and put yourself in the best situation you possibly can to go out there, thrive, and go out there and continue to kick ass and succeed at levels that you never succeeded at in the past. All right, so real quick, before we jump into this amazing podcast interview, if you have not done so already, you guys, make sure to go snag my newest book, Dominate Your Real Estate Business, Top Tips from a Top Producer. This is just collectively over my last 15 plus year long real estate career. These are tips, strategies, methods that have allowed me to become one of the top realtors and team leaders on the planet. There is nothing being sold. It's a 100% free online digital copy. You can go snag yours right now at joshuasmithfreebook.com. Again, joshuasmithfreebook.com. Again, you guys, nothing being sold. It's not filled with a ton of stories. I get right to the point, just giving you top tips, methods, and strategies that have allowed me to go out there and dominate in my own real estate business. All right, with that being said, let's jump on into this amazing GSD Mode podcast interview with my friend Alex Charfen. All right, Alex Charfen, my man, welcome to the podcast. What's this, round number 3, dude?
I think it is, Josh. Thanks for having me back, man. It's always so good to see you.
Yeah, no, man, I love anytime I can jam with you and pick your brain and learn from you, man. I mean, you've been a great friend and a great mentor, really a great mentor for, over a decade now. And, you were the guy that really took me from, I look at it as, I was in the business world, but I was a business owner that had a job. And you gave me the skill set and really also the mindset and the perspective to start treating my business as a business and gave me the tools to, again, go from, I guess, having a high income, maybe job to creating a business and scaling those businesses. And so I owe so much to you, man. So truly appreciate you taking time to be here, brother.
Oh, I appreciate that, Josh. I do want to make a point, though. Like, I might have opened the door for you. Very few people pick up the ball and run with it like you did. Like, the independence you've created, the businesses you've created, extraordinary, man. It's been such a joy to watch over the past 10 years.
Yeah, I appreciate that, my man. And for those, I know that this is round number 3, so a lot of our audience has heard your other podcasts. And you guys, if you haven't heard Alex's other 2 podcasts, we'll have those linked below so you can go check those out. But for those that are maybe just tuning in for the first time, this is their first experience with you, man. Can you give us just a quick backstory on, how you got started in entrepreneurship and what led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. I'll make it as brief as I can for those who've already heard me before. And since we're going to have the old podcast, you can go listen to the full story there. But I'll give you the abbreviated version. I have always been different than everybody around me. I've always felt like a party of one. I feel like entrepreneurship found me. I didn't find it. It was a place where I could go create my own rules, create my own systems, my own structures, didn't have to follow somebody else's plan. And so I started when I was a little kid with like the schoolyard businesses and built that into when I was in college. I started a financial consulting firm that I sold, ended up being a consultant in the Fortune 500 Global 100 in my 20s. So worked with some huge major multinationals like Fuji and Targus and Logitech, Microsoft, Belkin. It was an incredible experience. I started really in my 20s helping businesses grow. And that's been an obsession of mine my whole life. When I was a kid, my family lost a business. And I think it was one of those really psychologically, emotionally challenging things that kind of sparked this thing in my head that said, how do you make businesses grow? So it's been an obsession through my entire life. How do you make a business grow? And so I was able to work with some huge corporations. After I was a consultant, I got into real estate really heavy. I was always a real estate investor. In the early 2000s, Katie and I started a real estate company in South Florida. That's foreshadowing if this was a book, because by 2006 and 2007, we were completely wiped out. And we built that business to the tens of millions of dollars, 6 figures in profitability a month, well over 6 figures in profitability a month. And the way that last real estate crisis happened, within just a few months, it all dried up. And it was devastating. We, my whole life, all I wanted to be was a successful entrepreneur. And in 2007, I had to write a check and go to court to publicly and very vulnerably declare I was a complete failure. I was bankrupt. And what happened during that time was, it was a foreclosure crisis, and it was just at the beginning. And I started getting delivered with foreclosure paperwork. And every day foreclosure paperwork would show up at the house. And I started talking to Haley, that's my current operations manager. I started talking to Katie, who was my wife back then and still is. And I was telling her, I don't think this is going to work. The way that they're doing things are really going to cause a challenge. And what happened was, as a consultant and a business person and real estate investor, I saw an opportunity to create some synergy in the foreclosure world. And I created a product called the Certified Distressed Property Expert Designation. We introduced it in 2008 in the middle of going to bankruptcy court. No joker. End of 2007, right beginning in 2008. We were like going to bankruptcy hearings, and then I was going to try and sell the product. So it was one of those really unique times in life where it just feels like everything's happening. And the results were pretty intense. Katie and I were able to sell about 50,000 real estate agents into the CDPE. 47,600 and something actually finished the course. So we had over 96% adoption. And we started that product with the slogan, solving the foreclosure crisis one homeowner at a time. And Josh, when we said that, we looked like crazy people. Like we were bankrupt in a rented townhouse, no office, barely any money, like literally borrowing money from hotels so we could put on events and then pay them 30 or 60 days later. And here we are saying we were solving the foreclosure crisis one homeowner at a time. It just goes to show that when you're an entrepreneur, if you think you can, you should just put it out there, because in 2013, just about 6 years later, the US Treasury, on a recorded live broadcast from our office, not like Facebook Live, we were doing live broadcasts back then when nobody else was doing it. And Lori Maggiano from the US Treasury said that we had pulled forward the foreclosure crisis by 5 to 7 years. So not only did we set out to do it, we got confirmation that we did it. And in building that business, what happened was we were working with tens of thousands of real estate agents, and they kept asking us, how do I grow my business? How do I, the nuts and bolts, like what are the tactics, the strategies? I've got more business than I ever have because I'm working with distressed homeowners now. What do I do? And in the 2011 and 12 timeframe, we started teaching some business principles. Really in 2013, 14, 15, we were kind of wrapping up that business. In 2016, Katie and I shut it down, started a whole new business on business coaching, and really content we've been teaching for over a decade, but with a high level of focus. And today we coach a few hundred entrepreneurs around the world with businesses to be able to grow, to scale. And what we teach today is the structure, the process, the routine, so that entrepreneurs can grow their business predictably, but do it from a passenger seat. See, we think entrepreneurs shouldn't be running everything, shouldn't be doing everything. They should be coaching their business. They should be growing it. But much like a Fortune 500 CEO, they should take a step back and be able to guide that business, not from the driver's seat, but from a place where they're having other people drive the results and they're coaching success. And so that's what we do today. We have just an incredible group of clients around the world. And I love watching visionary entrepreneurs get the help they need. That's really what we do. If I had to define what we do today, we work with visionary entrepreneurs who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. And the ones that want to make a living just as much as they want to make a contribution. And we help them with the systems, the structures, the processes they need to be able to grow consistently. And the change we want to make is that visionaries actually can fulfill their visions rather than just thinking about them. And they can actually make the change they want to see in the world. And as a company, we will know we're successful when visionaries around the world are building teams, making massive change, growing empires, and making their greatest contribution.
Yeah. Love it, man. And what I love about, your coaching and your masterminds today is, a lot of our listeners, or most of our listeners, are in the real estate industry, right? And we go to all these real estate conferences, which can be great, but man, I learned a lot from those, but I learned so much more when I'm in a room with other successful entrepreneurs. And, and also when you talk about your coaching clients, I mean, these are high level entrepreneurs, right? I mean,
we just had 4 of them hit their first $1 million months last month.
Yeah.
So it was pretty awesome. And we just had another one of our members hit 45 million run rate, which is like crushing it. And so, yeah, these are, and we do start with our entry-level programs now are $297 a month, Josh. So our goal is to get somebody in when they're just starting the business or growing the business and then help them go all the way through. But what's really intense about our memberships is the $297 a month members get to spend time with the $50 million a year members. And that's what you're saying. When I was in real estate, we used to tell all of our members, get half of your education outside of real estate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just hearing the same thing in a different story. So get half of your education outside. And so, yeah, I agree. Being in a room with some diversity changes things.
Yeah, man. And I tell you, dude, it's a lot of entrepreneurs. And this is kind of what I said, where you helped me so much go from, being a practitioner, really just having a job. And yeah, I was classified as a business owner, but taking that from just being a great successful realtor to having a business, and so many struggle with that, man. It's, well, how do I delegate properly? How do I hire effectively my first assistant? How do I inspect what I expect, right? And how do I start to scale this, man? It's, it's such a bottleneck and a sticking point for most entrepreneurs. I mean, what's the statistic of most entrepreneurs that are solopreneurs?
Oh, it's over 90%. In fact, check out the numbers. The numbers they'll blow you away. In the United States, prior to COVID, I don't have post-COVID numbers yet because obviously things have changed. But prior to COVID, there was 29 million businesses in the United States. So keep the number 29 million in your head. 16 million of them are below $100,000 a year. So over half are under 100K. If we go up to 1 million and we put all of it together, we're at about 20 million out of 29 million are under $1 million. And so when you look at the vast majority of entrepreneurs, 90% of businesses in the United States are solopreneurships. And it means it's a person doing everything themselves. And here's the problem, Josh. One of the biggest issues, and this is what, people ask me all the time, how do I go from doing it all myself to getting help? And I think the first step is recognizing the psychological conditioning that happens to entrepreneurs when we start a business. So let's walk through this really quick, because I think this will be really valuable for all of your listeners. You and I have actually talked about this in your situation, Josh. I remember talking to you about it. What happens when you start a business is you must do everything in order to be successful. Do you remember that period, Josh? How hard was it?
Yeah, you're balancing a lot of plates, man, a lot of hats.
Yeah, it's like the hardest, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they say it's the hardest thing they've ever done. Dude, I did an event once and I had this conversation with the audience and I said, how hard was starting your business? And a woman was like, harder than having 3 kids. Another guy was like, harder than my divorce. Another guy stands up and he's like, I had stage 4 testicular cancer. And I'm like, he's going to say that was way harder than starting a business, right? He said, starting my business was harder. And I was blown away. I had to talk to the guy afterwards to validate it. That's how hard it is to start a business. People feel like they're jumping off a cliff. Well, here's what happens. That is a high emotional state. That is a high anxiety state. So starting the business, you're primed for psychological conditioning. When we're emotional, when we're anxious, we are primed for psychological conditioning. So what happens is we do everything to make our business successful, which conditions us to continue doing everything. And so it's so hard to let go of doing everything in your business. The first step, I think, is realizing, hey, the reason why you have this instinct, I need to do it. The reason you have that thought, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done right. The reason you have that thought, I'm the only one who can do this, is we have been psychologically conditioned to protect our progress by doing everything. So once we can let go of that, things change dramatically.
Yeah, 100%, man. Love it, dude. So, you mentioned the CDPE, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but was like the highest selling real estate designation of all time.
Yeah, it was the largest there ever was, including all of NAR's designations, which they really didn't like.
Yeah. and it's the only, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the only real estate designation I have and have ever taken in, my almost 16-year-long real estate career. But man, was it powerful, dude. And still, we're in a market well, we still, and I know most markets are this way, but because short sales aren't just dictated on a market crash, it's on a personal hardship. So, we still process about a half a dozen a month, and I learned all that process, from you and CDPE. And, but one thing I love about you, man, and, obviously all your experiences and everything that you've done and created, but also you're like the most researched guy I know. And by that, I mean, like, you don't go out there and just throw out opinions. Like, you are a dude that takes the time to vet things and researches and reads and with that. And, the biggest question I'm getting each and every day is like, what the hell's going on, man? Like, is the market going to crash? Is the economy going to crash? Because we're seeing the stock market do crazy things, but it seems to be so detached. We're seeing crazy things in the real estate market as well, just like the stock market, but it doesn't reflect what we're seeing happen with the average person out there, right? And, can you kind of give some insight of what's going on right now and where you think this might be headed, and then what we can do to prepare for it?
Yeah, no question, Josh. So, that's like the biggest question that there is right now, like what's going on and what's going to happen. And here's my estimation of where I think we are in the United States. When I was a kid, I didn't watch a lot of cartoons, but I saw the Roadrunner a few times. And you know how there's those scenes where like the Roadrunner paints a picture and Wile E. Coyote runs through it and then he's hovering over the cliff. Yeah. And he has like that 2 seconds when he doesn't fall. That's where we are right now. I think we're hovering and we haven't fallen. And we're getting some like nice upwinds because the government keeps writing checks to keep us hovering, but we are right there. And here's why I say that. We are in a financial and socioeconomic condition that we've never been as a country. Yet last month, 30% of either renters or homeowners reported that they had trouble paying last month or were going to have trouble paying this month. So depending on what survey you look at, we're looking at 1 out of 3 people not making their housing payment either last month or this month. That's so much greater than anything we saw during the foreclosure crisis. The biggest week of unemployment during the foreclosure crisis was 645,000 people. When you look at the biggest week of of unemployment that we've had since this crisis, it was 6 million. This week, yesterday, the numbers were reported, it was 900,000 and change. It was seen as a success that we didn't have double the previous record of people who are unemployed. And so when you look at the financial condition that has created in the market, what we're seeing is there are more people that don't have a job than ever before, more people not making their mortgage payment than ever before, more people not making their rent payment potentially than ever before. And then here's another big part of the economy that we're not really looking at is commercial real estate. When you look at what's happening in commercial real estate, the devastation of that market can already be predicted from where we are. When you look at, we've had thousands of retail stores go out of business. They're bankrupt. They're not coming back. Those that went out of bankrupt and were purchased by somebody else are going to be converted to online properties. So brick and mortar retail is not coming back. We've now had millions of businesses go from having office space, having people in person, to having to be forced remote. And a lot of them realize people are more productive. So they're probably not going to go back to reoccupying the commercial space that they had. We've seen massive devastation in the hospitality, travel, any type of Airbnb. That whole market is just crushed. And then on top of it, restaurants. When you look at where we go to eat and all the real estate that's occupied by the restaurants. So when I look at the real estate market, if we as a country are Wile E. Coyote hovering off the cliff, the real estate market went a little further and it's hovering off a cliff above a big bucket of alligators, because it's going to be a massive challenge no matter where you slice it. And here's what I hear consistently right now from real estate professionals, and really, Josh, from a lot of the uninitiated, and here's what I mean by the uninitiated. Anyone who went through the last crisis is looking at this and going, oh man, it's going to hit us so hard. Anyone who wasn't involved in the last crisis today is doing a lot of what I saw in 2007, 2008, and 2009. They're like, not going to happen here. We're good. You don't understand. I'm in insert the name of the market, and this is what's happening here. We're not going to get hurt here. And here's what I really think we're in. We're in this temporary condition where, because people don't want to move right now, we have a massive record shortfall of inventory, because we really haven't been building properties as we needed to the last few years. Now we're going to be even further short in properties in the short term. And so right now we have this almost false, healthy real estate market, but it's not healthy. It's actually so hot right now that it's become unhealthy. Like when we were just talking before the podcast, you said in Arizona, you have 2 weeks of inventory. Everyone should understand a healthy seller's market is 3 months of inventory. 2 weeks means there is major challenges in the market. Something's going bad, wrong in the market. And so right now we're in this temporary condition. And then once we start seeing foreclosure moratoriums lifted, eviction moratoriums lifted, we're going to see a massive rush of properties back onto the market. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. But I don't see a condition or a process or a way short of the government like funding people's mortgages or funding people's rent payments. I don't see a way that we get out of this without the real estate market taking a significant hit.
Yeah, man. And you know, when PPP first came out, you know, I was talking to, so many different entrepreneurs and in all different spaces, you know, and the common thing I had with them all was like, this is a Band-Aid. The second this runs out, right, having to lay off the people anyway. And those that I know that have laid people off because of technology today, you know, force them to incorporate technology. They probably should have incorporated before, but when things are good, you know, right? And we don't always make those adjustments, but they're like, man, we're a third of our staff, you know, right? But we're pumping out the same production. You know, right? And maybe that's because they kept their A players and cut everybody else. But then, of course, you know, that the technology component is kind of what makes me extremely scared and nervous. You know, like you go into a Taco Bell or McDonald's or whatever. It's like, dude, like you just go to kiosks now. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if we've ever seen a time where of a jobless recovery, if you will, you know. So then you start looking at, you know, like what we're already seeing in San Francisco, where the homeless population outnumbers the actual resident people actually living there, you know, right, in residences. And man, it's like we're in for some dire times, dude.
Yeah, I think, you know, Josh, I think it's really a double-sided coin, like every crisis is. On the one side of the coin in crisis, you have financial devastation and personal challenges and, you know, human beings suffering in a way that I don't think we're ever going to not that we won't see in the future. I don't think we've ever, in my lifetime, your lifetime, we have not seen the type of challenges we're about to see. Like we will see massive number of people on the streets. We're going to see people without food. We're going to see people without really a means to make money, because like you said, I think we're going to see that not only does the market realize it doesn't need as much commercial real estate, but the market might realize it doesn't need as many people. And, you know, short of massive infrastructure spending or the United States going to war, which by the way, that's how we've gotten ourselves out of most recessions, is either infrastructure spending or going to war. It's going to be hard for us to reemploy all those people. But now at the same time, I want to make something incredibly clear, is that coin has two sides, and crisis is opportunity, a period. Crisis equals opportunity. Does it equal pain and challenge and all those other things? Absolutely. But opportunity doesn't come without pain anyway. And so when I look at the word crisis, to me, crisis is accelerated change. And every crisis I've ever been through, I've been successful because in those periods of accelerated change, what there also is massive accelerated opportunity. I'll give you just one example. We work with a bunch of e-commerce companies that create products and sell them online. We also work with a few software as a service companies that create products and sell them online. And a friend of mine sent me a graph a couple of days ago, and it showed the growth of e-commerce versus brick and mortar real estate for the last 10 years. And over the last 10 years, there's been this very steady growth curve. It wasn't even a curve. It was a growth line. It was like a trend line up. And Josh, since March, e-commerce has grown the equivalent of what it's done in 10 years. So we just had 10 years e-commerce growth in a 6-month period. So whenever there's a crisis like this, as entrepreneurs, here's what we have to convince ourselves. We have to convince ourselves that this is an opportunity. And one of my mottos is the world can be in crisis and I will be in momentum, because everything can be, when the world's falling apart, when things are challenged, when markets are going down or they're racing up, or when there's turmoil, that is when there's the most opportunity for us as entrepreneurs. And so at the same time that this is going to be challenging and frustrating and all of those things, here's what I want us to remember for you, for me, for everyone listening to us. In every crisis in history, what has happened is entrepreneurs have risen above the noise. identified an opportunity, grabbed hold of it, made it happen, gotten into momentum, and taken the world with them. And that's what we need in this crisis and every crisis that's ever going to happen. And so as entrepreneurs, we need to just remember that crisis is opportunity. And when we convince ourselves we are going to grow through a crisis, we will see those opportunities and we'll be able to take advantage of them.
Yep. Love it, man. And yeah, we kind of had the conversation of the sky's falling or it's going to fall, which I think is important to have, right? Because
yeah, let's get real.
People that are burying their head in the sand, that aren't taking this seriously, that aren't applying the urgency and so forth. But those that have the awareness, that apply that urgency, as you mentioned, that choose to take action, get into momentum, capitalize on that. We know from recorded history that there's more millionaires and billionaires created during recessions and depressions than any other time.
Always.
So, massive amounts of opportunity out there. So with that being said, though, it can be tough. Like, you got to be able to see those opportunities to act on them. And right now, man, I can't say another time in my life it's that I've seen where there's more distractions, because not only do we have information overload, you got opinion overload.
Yeah.
Like, I got to the point where I just had to get off social media. Like, I don't even go on YouTube anymore. Like, I'll go to search, but I won't go to the home screen, because it's like everybody's now a medical expert, whatever.
Or a constitutional expert.
Yeah. And it's like on these rabbit holes and so forth. So, what advice do you give because, and again, to capitalize on those opportunities, like, we've got to be, I guess, calm in a state of, during a chaotic time, so we can see and act on those opportunities. So, what advice would you give, for people to, I guess, have the right mental focus and so forth to be able to act on those opportunities as they come along?
I know this is going to sound maybe cold or callous, but I would say don't participate in the crisis, participate in the opportunity. And here's what I mean by that. In every crisis that there's ever been, you can spend 100% of your time watching opinions and conspiracy theories and thought leaders and news. And today there is 200 social media channels where every single one of them, you can go involve yourself in this stuff if you wanted to. And here's the challenge for us as entrepreneurs, is that if we want to focus on all of those things, we can distract ourselves near 100% of the time. So you can feel like you're productive in a crisis because you're focusing on what you think you should, or what you've convinced yourself you should, but it will rob your productivity like crazy. And what can also happen is you get way too caught up in the subject matter of the crisis. So let me make a point here. So when I was a consultant, one of the incredible opportunities I had, it was such a privilege, was when I was working with a high-level CEO of a major corporation. Sometimes I'd be able to sit in when they were getting briefings from like McKinsey or Bain and Company or one of these big Deloitte or Arthur Andersen, huge firms. And a lot of times, Josh, those were during crisis periods, either crisis period for the company or the category, or crisis periods for the world. So I've been in tons of crisis briefings. In fact, I've been involved in crisis management in one way or another most of my life. And, as a consultant, nobody ever called us because everything was going right. We always got the call because it was like, hey, we should have called you 6 months ago. We need help yesterday. And so crisis is kind of my world. And here's how I've successfully navigated every crisis, including going from like bankruptcy to liquid millionaires within a year with the last crisis. And we didn't just go bankrupt and then to liquid millionaires. We actually were the 21st fastest growing company in the country in 2011. So bankrupt in 2007, 5 years later, 21st fastest growing company in the country. People ask me all the time how I did it. 3 words: most likely scenario. And I know that sounds like too simple, but it's not. Here's what I do in every crisis. I unplug from opinions. I unplug from conspiracy theories, and I look at what is the most likely scenario, and I use data to figure that out. And so what is the most likely scenario in the crisis that let's go back a minute. Let's go back to the foreclosure crisis. So here's what we did back then, Josh. And I know you're familiar with this because we used to talk about it. So in 2007, the whole world was saying we were in a 6 month to 1 year like real estate reset. And I went and looked at the numbers, and here's what I found. There was no way we were in a 6 month to 1 year reset, because there was so many bad mortgages that had been written. They were all going to have to be dealt with. And sooner or later, people's payments were going to go up. And we knew when people's payments went up on certain types of mortgages, as many as 1 out of 4 were not paying. And so what I was able to do was take the number of defaults times the number of mortgages, and then look at the dates where they were going to adjust. And as a company, we were able to start predicting, hey, in Minnesota, this is when you're going to have problems. In North Dakota, this is when you're going to have problems. In, New Jersey, in Connecticut, all these places, we could tell them with a very high level of accuracy when they were going to start seeing the explosive foreclosure numbers. I thought that was like this tool we were going to be able to use to like sell and market. And so what we would do is a couple months before there was a crisis in any market, we would say, okay, let's go to Connecticut because we're going to be there in March. We know that by May, June, or July, they're going to be really feeling it. So let's go up there. And I'd go up and I'd speak to a room of 100 real estate agents and I'd show them, let me show you how we successfully predicted this in Northern California, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Utah. And now let me show you what's going to happen in Connecticut. And you know what happened every time, Josh? Most of the room would say, oh, you know what? We really appreciate your data. And it was a really good presentation, but I don't think it's going to happen here. Like, you don't understand Connecticut, or you don't understand wherever I was. And what happens is there's this bias that we have that it's not going to happen to us and it's not going to happen here. And as a result, we just look at what's going on around us and we get distracted. And so when I say most likely scenario, that's what we did in the foreclosure crisis. The most likely scenario was when the mortgage rates go up, when the numbers hit, that's when they're going to experience crisis. And that was predictable through all from 2009 to 2013 or 14. It was completely predictable. And so today I look at what's most likely scenario. Well, this is different than the foreclosure crisis. What's weird was the initial spread maps looked almost the same. It was like deja vu because it was going on the coast and then moving towards the middle. But what we have is we have a novel virus in the market or in the environment, and it's acting like a virus. It's actually acting really predictably. There's a bunch of people saying, oh, you can't trust the data, you can't look at it, it's not good, and it's not that. It's actually been really predictable. Where there's been human behavior that allows a virus to spread, it spreads. And where we've knocked down that behavior, it stops spreading. So we need to just look at most likely scenario is that it's going to continue to act like a virus, like it has. And so when you look at economies like some of the economies overseas where they've knocked the virus down to the point where they've been able to reopen, those economies are going to recover faster just due to the fact that people can go outside and do what they need to do. When you look at an economy like the United States, it's difficult to see when we will stop experiencing the level of challenges that we have, because it doesn't matter what way people lean politically. Right now, about 60 to 80% of the population is concerned with the virus, depending on what poll you look at. So more than half of people are afraid to act like they normally do because of what's going on with the virus. And as long as we're seeing that, we're going to see significant constraint in the market. So we need to start thinking about where are the opportunities in a highly constrained market where there's a lot of challenges. Well, we're already seeing this. Flippers of every type are crushing it. Pawn shops are knocking it out of the park. Like, pawn shops are having some of their highest sales months in the history of any of the pawn shops I've talked to. When you look at rehabs are going to be a market that is going to probably outpace new construction. So used car sales are going to probably outpace new car sales. We're going to see a lot of the economy act like a challenged economy. And so as entrepreneurs, we need to start thinking about that. The other thing we should look at is, what are the socioeconomic conditions that are being created here that there's not a solution for? Where are people that are in pain? And so rather than get all caught up in the virus, figure out where there's people that are in pain and look at where there's pain right now. There's people that are having trouble getting food into their house because they don't want to go out to restaurants. So meal delivery services for people that are working at home are going to crush. Anybody who solves the homeschooling or education problem, like, I listened to a podcast a couple of weeks ago by Dr. Osterholm, who runs the Center for Infectious Disease at Minnesota. And it was his podcast where he was going to tell us how we could successfully send kids back to school. In the first 2 minutes, he said, this year is basically going to be a do-over. And so if there's an entrepreneur out there who can figure out how to not make the year a do-over for even a small group of kids, there's opportunity there. There's opportunity across the board, but it's all about most likely scenario. And here's how I approach this. If you believe in conspiracy theories, or you think that this is a political sham, or you think this is being like made bigger, or any of those things, I don't want to disagree with anybody, because let's be honest, we don't know. But what we do know is if you look at the science behind viral spread, this virus has acted almost exactly like it was predicted to act. And that's what we should look at. So conspiracy theories, political arguments, all of those things, if you want to be involved, I get it. I understand. A lot of us have like feelings like we need to be involved in that. For me, I look at what is the data, what's happening, and what's most likely to happen next. And in those briefings I was in, when I was a consultant, when I did get to watch like Bain or McKinsey or Deloitte come in, this is what they always told the CEO, Josh. Sooner or later in the conversation, they would say something like, hey, let's remember, do not get distracted by the subject matter of this crisis. Do not get distracted by the details in the crisis. Like, find the data and what you need so that you understand what's going on, and then let all of the conjecture, the opinion, everything else go so that you can focus on most likely scenario and run your business off of that. You know, you plan for the worst, you hope for the best, and you look at most likely scenario, and that's what you build your plan on.
Yeah, love it. Powerful stuff, man. And then, you know, I mean, that's, I mean, so many amazing tips and pieces of advice on what to plan, execute, and so forth. But like on a kind of on a more of a, I guess, personal or mental note, if you want to look at it that way, from the mentality.
Sure.
I mean, I'm having constant conversations with friends, even mentors of mine, you know, right, that I've always looked for inspiration and so forth. And, you know, the constant, just because of everything that's going on, man, it just seems like so many people are in a funk.
Yeah.
You know, right, where it's hard for them. I was talking with a good friend of mine the other day that is hard driving entrepreneur, whatever. I mean, what we get in an hour now is taking me a day, you know, right? And so from kind of that mental energy for somebody, because again, man, you can't turn on the news or, you know, like you're just walking around, like you go to the mall and people smile at you. It's kind of hard to not let this mess with you mentally a little bit. What are things that you are doing so that we can stay, I guess, in action and keep that momentum going and not allow ourselves to get funk when there's so much kind of out of our control?
Yeah, no question. So Josh, you know, I always have people tease me that when they ask me a question, I answer with a process. And so I'm going to answer with a process now. So, you know, I think here's something that we have to understand as entrepreneurs. The most important person in our business is us, period. You know, when I go out and speak, I often ask that question to a big room of people. I'll say, who's the most important person in your business? And I'll get answers like my secretary, my assistant, my wife, my salesperson, my GM. And then somebody will finally say me, and I'll be like, okay, this person, it's you. It's all of you. We need to remember you're the most important person in your business. And so when it comes to a crisis period, we have to do everything we can to insulate our human body, our organism, our mentality from accepting the crisis, from becoming part of the crisis. Like Josh said, you know, during the last crisis, when I was taken out into bankruptcy, I'm like, man, I need to figure out like how this works. Like, I'm bankrupt. You know what was weird? I started doing research on entrepreneurs who'd gone bankrupt, and I'm like, this is weird. It might be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because here's what I found over and over again. Entrepreneur had a successful career, went bankrupt, changed the world. Like over and over again. P.T. Barnum tried, went bankrupt, then started Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. You know, when you look at the stories are over and over again of like massive failure, huge comeback. When I was bankrupt, I read Think and Grow Rich, and in the book, it said there's a phrase that says every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater opportunity, and I just chose to believe it. And so here's how that's the mindset. Now, the fortification of who you are, to me, it's process, structure, and routine. And I know this sounds nuts, but I work with multi-million-dollar CEOs, and you know the thing we start with? A morning routine and drinking water. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds nuts to say, hey, you're in the biggest crisis in the history of the world, and what you need to do is wake up in the morning and check the boxes on your morning routine and make sure that you're really hydrated and checked in. But here's what we know as a company. We work with entrepreneurs in a crisis almost consistently, because if you build a big enough business, it's always in crisis. Our $50 million business owners, I mean, it's not, are you in crisis? It's how big is it this week? And so, you know, it's just a constant. Like Josh, you know, I did a ton of work with Dave Liniger. And Dave's like an icon in the real estate industry. He completely changed the real estate industry and built RE/MAX. And, you know, he's no longer in the business. He retired. But when you look at Dave, you know, there's 95,000 people in the world carrying a RE/MAX business card when he was running RE/MAX. And you look at that business, and if you were ever around him, he was one of the most calm, present, aware, like ready to engage, ready to talk CEOs I've ever been around. But at any given time, RE/MAX was defending dozens, if not hundreds of lawsuits. You have 95,000 people around the world doing financial transactions, stuff happens. That entire business, if you chose to look at it that way, was in crisis all the time. But what Dave chose to do was set the crisis aside and go make stuff work and go, do what he needed to do. I remember he once pulled up to Remax one day when he and I were meeting, and he jumped out of his car. And when he opened the door, Earl Nightingale was playing. For those of you who don't know who that is old school personal development. Here's a guy whose biggest house in all of Colorado, second biggest house in all of Arizona. At the time he had 2 jets, pulls up in a $100,000 car, jumps out, and he's listening to personal development. And so for us, it's the personal habits, the routines, the structure, it's hydration, it's having a morning routine, it's knowing what you're going to do next that will keep you out of participation in the crisis. Because here's what happens to so many entrepreneurs. When something like this happens, the first thing we stop doing is taking care of ourselves. And because there's so much going on, it's almost like an afterthought. And when we bring on a new member, the first thing we have them start doing is start taking care of themselves again. We get them to hydrate, eat the right foods, create a morning routine, start planning their days intentionally using our momentum planner system. And when you do those things, that is the foundation to keeping yourself engaged, productive, and actually finding the opportunities in a crisis. It's keeping yourself fully engaged and aware.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. Yeah, I was talking with a good friend of mine that is just on fire right now. Like she's in this like insane, I've never seen her in such a deep flow state, right? And so we're just having a conversation with her about it, what she's doing. And she's like, look, when this pandemic crisis, whatever you want to call it, first started, she's like, man, I was freaking out. She's like, I started having like this same repeated almost nightmare every night. She did some research on it and found out that it was because she felt like she wasn't in control. And there's a lot of things that we can't control, but she's like, I made a list of things I can't control in my life. She's like, I can control that my house is spotless every single day. I can control my morning routine, my workout, whatever. And she's like, I just got more laser focused than ever in my life on controlling what I can't control. And she's like, that's it. And that's what put her in this flow state. Now, dude, it's carried over to every aspect. She is just on fire, man. And, and I'm sharing that because, as you said, it might sound silly when I say to drink water or to, complete your morning checklist, but I don't think people understand the power in that.
Oh, so, Josh, one of the things that I've actually had the opportunity and privilege of doing is working with people when they're in crisis, not when the market's in crisis, but when a human being's in crisis. I've worked with CEOs that have made the wrong decisions in either their business or in their personal life and have created massive crisis for themselves. I've worked with people who have misstepped or stepped out of line in some way and have created legal crisis for themselves. I've worked with people who out of nowhere were suddenly in an interpersonal relationship crisis in their marriage. And any one of the 3 things that I just named can completely derail you and make you want to take your toys and go home. And it's not just that. What happens is any one of the 3 things I just named makes you feel constrained. And here's what happens when entrepreneurs feel constrained. When we feel like we're held in place, like we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, like there's so much going on, we can't figure it out, like we don't know our next steps, almost immediately our bodies break down. Like we feel fatigued and tired and exhausted and your eyes hurt and you can't really see straight. Josh, you know what I'm talking about? That feeling's like the worst. I mean, believe me, since March, there's been hours and days where I'm like, man, this is overwhelming. And I have to like go back to the systems we're talking about. And the second thing that happens, it's not just physiologically. When I get into that space cognitively, I get brain fog. I start feeling like, man, I'm feeling my age or something, like what's going on here? And I have trouble making decisions. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So cognitively, I have trouble. And here's the big one. When I feel that feeling of constraint, when the focus becomes the constraint in my life, I get chemically affected. Like I feel the chemical depression, the chemical decline of being in constraint. Josh, you know what I'm talking about? The chemicals?
Yep, 100%.
Brutal. So brutal. And so when we look at ourselves as entrepreneurs, if we focus on constraint, we are going to break down physiologically, cognitively, and mentally every single time. And the way that we can get ourselves out of that focus is exactly what you said, Josh. You proactively create a focus on what you can do. So if you get up every morning, you crush a morning routine, you get up and you plan your day intentionally, you get up and you focus on the structure, the process, the routine that keeps you going, you eat the right foods, you drink enough water, you will see a sea change in your life, whether you're in crisis or not. And so when I was working with people that were in that personal level crisis, that deep, like derailing, like, what do I do next? Honestly, Josh, some of them were like, do I even want to do this anymore? And they weren't talking about their business. They were just talking about, period. Do I want to do this anymore? Which is like a tough place to be as a coach or consultant. Gosh, sorry, I got a little emotional there for a second. I just remembered the last time it's happened to me. And when somebody kind of told me like they were thinking about checking out. And what we've done every time is taken a step back and said, okay, what can we control? What can we focus on? Where can we put energy, attention, focus, and effort to move things in the right direction? And for me, in the work I've done, every single time, it's been a focus on structure, on process, on routine to walk your way out of it. And it's just, that's what works.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, man. So talk to us about, some of the, I mean, you have many different programs out there available, different levels of coaching that you do. And as I mentioned earlier in this interview, I mean, I've been coaching with you for about 10 years now. You've been such a huge mentor to me. So I want to make sure that everybody that's watching this and listening to this knows what you have available, what that looks like, what those options are. So can you kind of shed some light on the different stuff that you have available and what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And by the way, I just want you to know, like I share often that you're one of my big success stories. I'm like, check out GSD Mode. Because you're one of the most longstanding clients I have in this space. So yeah, here's what we're doing now. So we help entrepreneurs with the process, structure, and routine that it takes to grow your business from any point. And really, the way that we look at it, you need three things in a business to grow predictably. You need a strategic plan, so a plan that everybody understands what's going on. There's a roadmap, whether it's just you and a couple of people, or you and a couple hundred people. That roadmap gets everybody clear and oriented towards the future and towards growth. The second thing we believe you need is a system where everyone on your team, including you, understands the plan. So there's a communication system. There's a structure through which everyone knows what's going on. You are not the structure. And then the third thing is a systematic way to build the infrastructure of your business. And so today we have coaching memberships that show you how to build a strategic plan, communicate it to the team that you're building, build that team, and then build the infrastructure of your business, which means the people, the processes, and the projects that you should be doing in order at the right time for the biggest effect. And we have 3 coaching programs now. Our first one's called Foundation. It's for people who are in earlier stages of business, where we help you with literally the foundation of the business, understanding the strategic plan, getting really clear on what you're going, an execution system so that you can get it done faster than you ever thought possible. That's our $297 a month coaching program. If somebody has a partner and they want to bring in somebody with them, it's $497 a month. Then we have our second program. So that's Foundation. The second one is called Catalyst. Now, Catalyst is for once you have things kind of up and going, the business is growing. Catalyst helps you build out your core strategic team. That group of people that's going to take you from probably multiple 6 figures into the multiple 7 figures. And then once you're in that multiple 7-figure range, your focus really has to shift from building out the core strategic team to building out a leadership team and breaking the company into departments. And so we help with that big transition from core team to departments. You go from our Catalyst program to Accelerator. And Accelerator Catalyst is either $800 a month for one person, it's $1,500 for 2. And then our Accelerator program is our largest program. It's $2,500 a month for 2 people. It's always 2 people because we have the CEO and the person helping them operate the business. And that is an intensive program where we help you break the company into departments, make sure you understand the measurements of what's going on. And here's the key. We help CEOs and entrepreneurs get into what we call the passenger seat. We think you should run your business from the passenger seat. So all of our programs show you the discipline, the structure, the routine to get into the passenger seat. And here's what that means. We want you to have a business where you don't run every meeting, you don't make every decision, you don't do all of it. Instead, you set the vision that everyone's going to help you chase down, and then you coach your team from a passenger seat. We show you how to let your team drive the business, let your operator drive the business, because at the end of the day, visionary entrepreneurs are not the best managers. So let's get you out of that management position and firmly into a leadership position so you can grow your business.
Yep. Yeah, love it. Powerful stuff. And where's the best place, Alex, to check this stuff out, man? And you guys, I mean, like I mentioned, Alex has been a coach and a mentor of mine for 10 years, had a massive impact and has changed my life. So I highly recommend that you guys check this out. You take it serious. And but where's the best place, Alex, for them they want to jump into it or learn more about it? Where's the best place to go do all that at?
So there's a couple of places. So one, if you want to get something right now and kind of understand what we do and understand where you are as an entrepreneur, you can go to billionairecode.com. The Billionaire Code is our matrix, our framework for the 9 levels you go through to become an entrepreneur that has a $100 million business. And by looking at the Billionaire Code, you will understand exactly where you are, what you should have already done in your business to get to where you are so you can shore up anything that you need to in your foundation. And then also we'll show you what you're going to do next so you can start to anticipate what is needed. So billionairecode.com will give you a ton. And then Josh, we have a pretty amazing opportunity. First week of October, I'm doing an absolutely free training. We expect to have several thousand entrepreneurs there. And it's called Momentum Masterclass. So you can go to momentummasterclass.com. And I'm doing 3 days on understanding yourself and your business, getting clarity on what you need to do next, and exiting those 3 days with a clear plan and a clear understanding of what you're going to do next so you can do it with confidence. Here's what I know about entrepreneurs. When we're confident in where we're going and we believe in the destination, we will mash the accelerator pedal down to the floor. So my goal in Momentum Masterclass is to give you everything you need. So when you walk out of there, the accelerator pedal is on the floor and you're in full momentum.
Yeah, no, love that. And wherever you guys are watching and listening, we'll have links to all that below. So if you just scroll below, you'll be able to get signed up for that Momentum Masterclass, and we'll have all those links right below. And yeah, dude, I'll tell you, I don't think, unless they've experienced it, I don't think people understand the power of momentum, but also the devastation that will allow yourself to break that momentum that it can cause. And I've had it, one main, I started too many companies in a short period of time and got way extended, and I let certain things slide, man. And dude, I broke that momentum. It took about 18 months to rebuild and get that back. And, I don't think people understand the power of momentum, compounding momentum. I think it's the most powerful thing that can exist.
Oh, no question. I often tell people that as entrepreneurs, we need momentum like the rest of the world needs oxygen.
Yep. 100%, man. So how are things right now in Austin, dude?
So, it's interesting, Josh. We're in Texas where things are pretty open, where they've tried to open back up. And it's an interesting condition. We have had record low testing, so we don't really know what our numbers are. A lot of the businesses have been reopened because they're allowed to reopen, but people are not coming out and actually going out to the businesses. So my kids and I were just up at the mall last weekend, and there was definitely way more traffic than we've seen since the beginning of the crisis. We go up there to kind of gauge like what's going on. But what was interesting is there wasn't a lot of traffic in stores. There wasn't a lot of people in stores. For me, I've been coaching and helping entrepreneurs my whole life. And so for my goal in this crisis is like, what is the fastest path to getting the economy back open? What is the fastest path to getting entrepreneurs working again and hiring people again and getting out there again? And right now, it's really hard to see how we're going to do that. It's difficult to see. Like, I know there's a big camp of people that are like, hey, just open it all back up. But then you run into the problems we're running into here in Texas, where you open it back up and then you see hospitals get flooded and then you have to shut it back down. And so we're in kind of that same twilight zone of not really fully reopened, but not fully closed that the whole country has. So it's been interesting, Josh. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, it's one of the, it's such a crazy, I couldn't fathom being a decision maker, government official during this time, because it's, you look at the virus itself and the negative implications of that. But then with closing everything down, the stat I heard was for every 37,000 unemployed, for every 1% the unemployment rate goes up, accounts for 37,000 deaths. So it's like, you're just kind of, okay, what's the lesser of the two? Man, I couldn't fathom, dude. It's craziness.
100%. It's one of those conditions in the world where either way you go, there's significant challenges. And so again, that's why for me, here's what I know. I'm not a decision maker in this process. I'm not a decision maker in what we should do next. So I've stayed out of the what should we do, and I'm focused on what is happening and what's most likely to happen next. I have some opinions on what we should do? Yeah, but you know what? I don't even know if they're valid enough to share because I'm not a scientist. That one of the really interesting dynamics that's happened since March is almost everybody that I see on Facebook has either become a constitutional scholar or a medical expert. And I've really tried to refrain from doing either one of those things. And so, for me, I understand that my opinions are my opinions, and they're probably invalid based on my lack of knowledge and understanding. But when it comes to the economic portion of this, when it comes to the numbers portion of this, when it comes to the what might happen next in the numbers, that's where I'm putting all of my focus.
Yep. I love it, man. Well, and the debt don't each other. You haven't steered me wrong yet. So I truly appreciate, man, all your insight, dude, everything that you do, man. I mean, you've had such a big impact on my life and so many others, and appreciate you taking time to be here, man. This has been an amazing time. And again, just appreciate everything you do, my friend.
Yeah, for sure, Josh. It was so good being here. And to all the listeners of GSD Mode, if you heard my other two podcasts in the past, then you and I have something in common. We've been fans of Josh for a long time. I don't do a lot of podcasts the second and third time, but I will come back to this one over and over again just because I love hanging out with you, Josh. I know that you're one of those entrepreneurs that's doing the right thing in the world, making things happen, and actually, for real, getting shit done. And I just appreciate I appreciate you having me back, and I appreciate our friendship and our relationship, man. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but I don't have hundreds of people that I can count friends for over a decade. And dude, you're one of them. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it truly means a lot, my friend. And again, thank you so much for being here, dude. It was always an honor and a great time. Those watching and listening, thank you so much for watching. Truly appreciate your support. Keep kicking ass, and we will see you next time. Peace. Hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.